So get this. The most powerful man in artificial intelligence, the guy holding the keys to the most disruptive technology in human history, claims he owns 0 shares.
0.
In his own $100 billion company. Just think about the absurdity of that for a second. We're talking about the CEO of OpenAI.
Right.
On paper, no financial stake. It sounds like this ultimate act of altruism, doesn't it? The monk in the gray t-shirt, working only for the good of mankind.
It's a beautiful story. It's perfect for a magazine cover.
Yeah.
But if you scratch the surface, even just a little bit, that whole monk narrative,
Right.
it just falls apart.
Okay.
It isn't an act of charity. Our sources say it is a weapon of misdirection.
A weapon of misdirection. That's a heavy accusation. Because, usually in Silicon Valley, the greed is right there on the cap table. You can see who owns what.
It's all out in the open.
You're saying this lack of equity is actually a strategic move.
Precisely. If you think you're watching a tech CEO build a product like ChatGPT, you are missing the actual show. You are witnessing what our sources call a system integrator, building a parallel civilization. We aren't just looking at a chatbot. We are looking at a civilization stack, a closed-loop system where one man controls the intelligence, the energy, the biology, and the currency of the future.
Okay, that sounds like the plot of a sci-fi thriller, but I have the report right here. Analysis of Sam Altman's power. The mission for this deep dive is to figure out how you become the most influential person on Earth without technically owning the thing that makes you powerful.
Exactly.
We need to dismantle this assetless emperor myth.
We do, and we need to start by understanding why he does it. When Sam Altman sits before Congress or talks to regulators, he can look them in the eye and say, I have no equity, I don't make money if this gets dangerous, I just want safe AI.
It's a PR shield.
It's the ultimate PR shield.
Right.
It gives him this lever of moral superiority that Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk just doesn't have. It disarms the very people who are supposed to be watching him.
But he has to eat. Right. He's not living on ramen noodles and sleeping on a couch in the office anymore. Where is the actual money?
Oh, the money is there. It's just not in OpenAI directly. It's hidden in the architecture around it. He uses external vehicles to hold massive wealth. We're talking an estimated $2 billion.
$2 billion?
And the sources point to 2 main entities, Hydrazine Capital and Apollo Projects.
Hydrazine. Sounds volatile.
It's rocket fuel. And that's a fitting name. Hydrazine is a venture fund he started, backed heavily by Peter Thiel.
Ah, Thiel.
Right. So through these funds, Altman isn't betting on OpenAI directly. He's betting on the ecosystem OpenAI creates. Think of it like the California gold rush.
Okay, I'm with you. The old selling shovels strategy.
But it's more sophisticated than that. Sam isn't just selling shovels. He's the guy who owns the company making the pickaxes, the company selling the denim jeans, the company selling the whiskey, and the railroad that brings the miners to the mountain.
So if OpenAI succeeds, the value of the entire supply chain just explodes.
Exactly. He doesn't need to own the mine to get rich. He owns all the infrastructure the mine relies on.
So OpenAI is the engine, but he owns the fuel lines and the tires. That actually makes the zero equity claim feel a bit cynical.
Yeah.
But is there proof that he leverages this, or is he just a lucky investor?
There is a smoking gun in the report. It's about the OpenAI Startup Fund. This is where the conflict of interest moves from theoretical to, well, blatant.
What was it?
The fund invests in early-stage AI companies building on top of ChatGPT. Naturally, if you saw that name, you would assume OpenAI, the nonprofit or the capped profit entity, owns that fund.
I mean, it's literally called the OpenAI Startup Fund. It's on the label.
But for a significant period, legally, it wasn't owned by the company.
Who owned it?
It was owned and controlled solely by Sam Altman personally.
Wait, cause. So he was using the company's brand, the most valuable brand in tech, to raise money for a fund that was legally just.
It meant he had unchecked power to pick the winners in the AI ecosystem. He could unilaterally decide which startups got funding and, crucially, which startups got early access to the newest models.
So he was building an ecosystem of dependency.
Where all roads led back to him, and he didn't have to answer to the board about those specific investments.
That is a massive amount of leverage. He's acting as the kingmaker. If you want your AI startup to survive, you need to kiss the ring.
Then that leverage is what allows him to build the civilization stack. This is the core concept of the analysis. You have to realize his ambition has outgrown software.
Software is just the brain.
Right. If you want to run the future, you need a body. You need energy, you need biology, and you need a way to pay for it all.
Let's break down this stack. The report lists 4 pillars. We know Pillar 1 is intelligence. That's OpenAI. What's Pillar 2?
Pillar 2 is energy. You cannot run a superintelligence on the current power grid. It's just, it's impossible. We are talking about data centers that consume as much power as entire cities. This is where Helion energy comes in. Altman has poured hundreds of millions of his own dollars via those external funds into Helion. They are trying to crack nuclear fusion.
Fusion, the holy grail of energy. Infinite clean power.
And here's the gold rush mechanic again. OpenAI has signed a deal to buy power from Helion starting in 2028.
Hold on, let me map this out. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, signed a deal to buy power from a company where Sam Altman is the chairman and primary investor.
He sits on both sides of the table. He controls the demand, the massive compute needs of AI, and he is building the supply, the fusion energy. It is a closed loop.
He is effectively buying electricity from himself using OpenAI's budget.
That's the point.
That feels wildly illegal, or at least it would be in a normal public company.
In a normal company, the SEC would be all over it. But remember, the structure of OpenAI is unique, and his lack of direct equity muddies the waters. He can just argue it's strategic necessity. We need power. Helion offers power.
But it cements his position. He isn't just the AI guy, he's the utility company. Okay, so we have intelligence and energy. What about the other pillars?
Pillar 3 is biology, retro biosciences. The goal there is extending human life, adding 10 years to the healthy human lifespan. He's invested $180 million there. And Pillar 4 is identity and distribution. That's Worldcoin.
We'll get to Worldcoin in a minute because that one is, well, it's creepy. But when you step back and look at intelligence, energy, biology, and identity, this doesn't look like a portfolio.
No.
It looks like a government.
It looks like a technocratic empire. He's building the infrastructure for a post-human economy, and when you operate at that scale with that much consolidated power, you make enemies.
Which brings us to the coup.
Which brings us to the most misunderstood event in recent tech history, the coup of November 2023.
The long weekend. I remember scrolling Twitter or X and seeing the headline, Sam Altman fired. It felt like Steve Jobs getting kicked out of Apple.
Total chaos.
But the narrative at the time was so confusing. Was it just a disagreement on safety? Or was this something darker?
It was an anatomy of a failed coup, but it was also a stress test of the power structure he built. The board didn't just fire him because they disagreed on strategy. They fired him because, in their words, he was not consistently candid.
Which is polite corporate speak for he lied to his bosses.
Repeatedly. The sources detail specific tactics. One of the most damning was a concept called pitting.
Pitting.
He would turn board members against each other to keep them uncoordinated. There was a specific incident involving Helen Toner, a board member from Georgetown. She had written a research paper that was mildly critical of OpenAI's approach to safety.
And Sam didn't like the criticism coming from inside the house.
He hated it. But instead of having a frank conversation, he reportedly went to other board members and just lied. He told them that Tasha McCauley, another board member, wanted Helen Toner out. He tried to manufacture a consensus for her removal based on a falsehood.
So he's playing survivor. He's telling board member A that board member B hates them just to get a vote.
Exactly. But the board members, they compared notes. They realized they were being manipulated. And they realized, look, if we can't trust the CEO to tell us the truth about a personnel issue, how can we trust him to tell the truth about HEI safety or about a fusion deal?
They had zero oversight.
None. So they pulled the trigger.
But they missed, or rather the bullet bounced off.
Yeah.
He was back in 5 days. How does a board who legally has the absolute right to fire the CEO lose that fast?
Because Sam had built a weapon they didn't anticipate. Weaponized loyalty. And of course, the backing of the ultimate whale, Microsoft.
Satya Nadella.
Satya looked at this mess and realized his billion-dollar investment was melting down. He effectively said, fine, if OpenAI fires Sam, Microsoft will hire him and every single employee at OpenAI. He offered to hollow out the company overnight.
And the employees revolted.
They did. But ask yourself why. Was it purely love for Sam? Or was it the fact that their stock options, their millions of dollars, would go to zero if the company collapsed?
Oh, yeah.
Sam had aligned their financial survival with his personal employment.
That is the checkmate. He made himself too big to fail inside his own startup.
And the result was a purge. The independent directors who stood up to him, gone. Helen Toner, Tasha McCauley, Gone.
And they were replaced.
By loyalists and establishment heavyweights like Larry Summers.
Yeah.
The final checks on his power were removed. The coup didn't weaken him. It proved that he is untouchable.
So he survives the coup, he secures the throne, and he has the board in his pocket. Now, logically, he creates Project Stargate.
Right.
Because billions aren't enough anymore, he needs trillions.
We are shifting to the current day, 2025-2026. The ambition is scaled up. Project Stargate is the plan for a supercomputer network estimated to cost between $100 billion and $500 billion.
To put that number in context, $500 billion.
To put that in perspective, the entire Apollo program, putting a man on the moon, cost about $250 billion in today's money.
He's asking for double the moon landing.
Double the budget of the moon landing, just to build the server firms for the next generation of AI. No venture capital firm on Earth has that kind of cash. Apple doesn't even have that liquid.
So if Silicon Valley is broke relative to your ambition, where do you go?
You go to the sovereign wealth funds, you go to the Middle East. Altman has made a significant pivot to the UAE, specifically partnering with G42 and Sheikh Tenon.
We've seen the photos. But this isn't just a business deal, is it? This is pure geopolitics.
It's a minefield. G42 is a massive tech conglomerate in Abu Dhabi, but the CIA and the National Security Council are deeply worried about them.
Why?
G42 has historical ties to China, using Huawei equipment, handling genomic data that might end up in Beijing.
So Sam is walking a tightrope. He needs Emirati money to build Stargate, but he needs American permission export licenses to get the NVIDIA chips to power it.
He is effectively conducting his own foreign policy. He's navigating between the White House and the Persian Gulf, leveraging the U.S. desire for AI supremacy against the Gulf's desire for a post-oil future.
He is betting that the U.S. government needs him more than they fear the security risks.
It's a dangerous game. If he trips, the whole project gets blacklisted.
Let's talk about the part of the stack that actually touches the listener directly. Because Stargate is infrastructure. Worldcoin, or just World, is about people.
It is.
And it feels like the most dystopian piece of this whole puzzle.
It is the identity layer. The problem OpenAI is creating is that AI breaks the concept of truth online. Bots will sound like humans. Deepfakes will look like reality. You won't know if you're hiring a person or a script.
So Worldcoin is the solution.
The orb. You stare into a chrome sphere, it scans your iris, a unique biometric marker, and issues you a world ID. It is proof of personhood.
And the hook is that they pay you.
They pay you in crypto tokens, WLD. The pitch is, when AI takes all the jobs, this is how we will distribute universal basic income, or UBI.
So if I'm listening to this and I lose my job to an AI agent, Sam Altman is effectively saying, don't worry, I own the AI that fired you, but I also own the coin that will pay your unemployment check.
That is the panopticon effect. It creates a dependency loop where the cure and the disease are managed by the same architect. But look at the reaction. It's not just people complaining on Reddit. Governments are terrified of this.
I read about the raids in Kenya. That sounded intense.
It was called biometric colonialism. Agents raided the Worldcoin warehouses. The government suspended the project. You had thousands of people lining up, scanning their eyes, often without fully understanding the privacy implications.
Just to get $50.
Just to get the equivalent of $50 because they were desperate.
It feels predatory.
It feels like data harvesting disguised as charity. In Europe, Spain and Portugal banned it due to GDPR violations. The argument is, you cannot build a global identity database owned by a private corporation, especially one run by the same guy controlling the AI.
Because it gives one man the power to turn off your identity.
And your income.
Now, despite all this, the money, the influence, the geopolitical chess, the report says there are cracks, black swans, things that could bring the whole tower down.
There are significant vulnerabilities. The first is personal. We have to address the Annie Altman case.
This is a sister.
Yes. In 2025, she filed a lawsuit alleging abuse. Now, we must be clear. Sam and his brothers have categorically denied these allegations.
All right.
They frame it as a tragic result of her mental health struggles. The media has largely hesitated to cover it deeply, likely due to the complexity and the intense litigation threats.
But it hangs there. It's a dormant risk.
It challenges the savior narrative. The civilization stack relies on trust. We are trusting him with our data, our energy, our economy. If the public turns on his character, if he stops being the monk and starts looking like a villain, that trust evaporates.
And then there's the regulatory siege. The FTC isn't sleeping on this.
The Federal Trade Commission is investigating whether the Microsoft partnership is a hidden merger. If regulators decide that Microsoft actually controls OpenAI, they could force a breakup.
And that would destroy the financial model of Project Stargate.
Completely. Microsoft is the bank account. If you cut the cord, the money for the fusion plants and the server farms disappears.
So let's wrap this up. We started this deep dive by saying Sam Altman isn't just a tech CEO.
No. The listener needs to shift their frame of perception completely. Do not see a startup founder. See a technocratic Caesar. He has captured the infrastructural heights of the future. He isn't just selling you software. He is positioning himself as the toll collector for the next stage of human civilization.
He has structured it so that the future of U.S. technological supremacy is leveraged on his personal architecture. He is too big to fail.
But that architecture is fragile. The entire civilization stack rests on alliances that can break and technologies that don't fully exist yet. Fusion isn't commercially viable today. AGI doesn't exist today. The UAE alliance is politically radioactive.
So here is the question we need to leave you with. It's the question that keeps the National Security Council up at night. If just one of these pillars cracks, if Helion fails to generate power, or if the deal with the UAE implodes, does just one company fail?
Or does the entire roadmap for the next century collapse with it? That is the risk we are all betting on, whether we scan our eyes or not.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Keep your eyes open. We'll see you in the future, if it works out.